Hello and welcome to the Real Biz Life Chronicles, where we discuss all things business, branding, and life. I'm your host, Tracy Fryer. My guest today is the founder of Kommunity Brew. He was a finalist on Gordon Ramsay's Food Stars, and he's here today to not only share his journey of cultivating world-class kombucha, but also to share his tips with us on what it takes to cultivate an entrepreneurial mindset. Mason Bagios, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Tracy.
Welcome. I'm so excited about our chat.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be nice to share stories.
Yes, I cannot wait to. I thought what might be great, Mason, is if you could perhaps take us back to where it all started and how you find yourself in the kombucha space.
Well, that's going back a ways. So that's because that's 9 years ago. So
wow,
it takes a while for any like early stage idea to get legs. And mine happened from, I guess, personal life experience. So 9 years ago, I went to Hawaii on holiday, like ecotourism. And I had just sort of started to like drink less / quit drinking. I was studying health science and I just sort of thought, I'll just try like dry July, basically. And I landed in Hawaii, which was pretty awesome. It was like, coconuts on the beach, like mangoes every day.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was just pristine and natural. And I noticed, this was not planned, but where the accommodation I went was actually dry. And I didn't notice that they weren't drinking there because I wasn't drinking.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I went to the bar they had there, and it was actually a kombucha bar. And it turns out a lot of people that move to Hawaii and live there tend to be like pretty healthy or like naturally living people.
I didn't realize. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful environment for it. And so then I was drinking kombucha and I was like, this is amazing. I'm like, there's all these people around. It's like a pub in Perth or maybe a pub on an island, but it was suddenly like, it was a really social experience. I just thought, if Australians had this, it would be easy to not drink. And so that kind of like, that sort of planted the seed. And then I traveled around a bit and I came back to Perth and I was like, my health science background was suggesting I would go be a nutritionist. That was kind of like a nutritionist or dietitian was going to be the end result there. And I was getting to my clinic hours and I was like finishing my health science degree. And I thought I can speak to 7-8 people a day and tell them to live healthier, or I could make something that thousands of people or hundreds of thousands of people could have, and it would make them healthier every time they drink it or eat it, whatever. Thinking back to that moment and that drinking experience, I thought Aussies could certainly drink less. So
oh my gosh, and South Africans.
and South Africans and everyone kind of knows like you probably should just drink less alcohol. But what do you do when you make that decision?
That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean it's awkward. Like people, like if you suddenly try dry July, everyone asks you like, "Why are you doing it?" I could never do it. I can't live without beer.
Totally. And if you're a woman, they're like, "Oh, you're pregnant." It's like, no, I'm just trying to be a bit healthier. I actually gave up drinking 2.5 years ago. It was one of the best decisions. But like you say, it's almost like you can only drink so much orange juice. Not that I even drink that, but only so much Coke Zero in a wine glass. So it's really nice to have a variety of options. So you still feel like you're kind of having something a bit special.
Absolutely. It's really sad when you just take a brief moment off booze, how poor the options are and how it's just still soft drink.
Yes.
So, and that kind of like the kombucha thing kind of blew my mind. I'm like, wait, it's a brewed drink. Oh, so it's like beer, but it's not as alcoholic. Okay. And then that kind of just got my wheels turning around. It really, it's not for kids, right? Kombucha's pretty funky. Like it's got this element that champagne, wine, beer all has, where it's like, not that kids should be drinking any of this stuff, obviously.
No.
But, whenever someone has their first alcoholic drink, it's not usually like, yum. It's a peer pressure thing usually. Like people like, I need to like it because I'm an adult now. Or
so
then we're like,
true.
if we can make this delicious, then it kind of fits as an adult soft drink. Is we didn't really term it a soft drink, but that's really what it was being. It's that adult alternative. And then just trial and error. Like we bootlegged, just door knocked and sold we just offered it to kind of people we knew in our neighborhood. Like, hey, this is kombucha. Can you tell us if you like it or not? That's kind of it. Like, just tell us if you like it or if you think it's gross. And we did that around Fremantle for a few months. And then we took it to like parties and we just really tested. I keep saying we because I founded this with my best friend. So
yes, I wanted to ask you.
Oh,
and,
So,
and so how did,
You go ahead, Trace. What's the question?
No, I interrupted you. I wanted to say, so where did it go to from there? So you trialed things at parties and refresh my memory because kombucha's only really come into Australia probably around about a few years ago.
Yeah, so it kicked off in 2016. It was when it sort of started to get into health food stores and like kind of get into like a lot of vitamin shops, like because people were drinking it as like a gut health product. And it sort of started when sauerkraut became commonplace as well. So there was a lot of talk about gut health, microbiome, celiac, like a lot of those celiac, gluten-free consumers were sort of gravitating towards it because they had discomforts.
Yeah.
My view on it, I was working at a health food store when I came back to Australia and I started to like build this idea in my head. And my best friend was also my colleague. So he was like the supervisor of the shop and I was the general manager and buyer. So together we were sort of talking to a lot of healthy people would come in and they would be gluten-free. And we saw kombucha came in on our shelves. It was selling really well, but always to those like really fringe health people. And it sort of dawned on me, I'm like, there's a whole nother application here because I just thought of it like beer. I was just like, it's just like beer. It's just like beer.
Yeah.
I know it's good for your gut, but really it could just be in a keg. It could be in a keg, it could be in a pub, poured on tap, and people could drink it. So I tapped my mate Jared on the shoulder for about a year. I was just like, hey, I think we should go into business together because we work really well. And I'm pretty sure this idea is bigger than what I can do on my own. So if you're willing to like join me, maybe we could make this work. And we were just 24. So we were like, we were at the start of any career. So we thought,
of course.
So he was the one that was knocking on those doors with me. And like, we were just working out how to brew it. And health science played a bit of a role. So he was studying herbalism, like sort of, he was doing like a degree, not a degree, a like certificate in naturopathy and like learning to be a herbalist. And he was like way into the extreme forms of health sort of stuff. And so then we just sort of like worked out together, like we have to learn how to brew, we have to learn how to do fermentation, we have to learn how to make a food, like how to get like a product that's safe for the public and like all of that sort of stuff.
Yes. And so what happened then? So you guys did door knocking, and then what was kind of, I guess, the next milestone for you guys?
Farmers markets was kind of like a lot of it was listening. Like we'd read a few books like the Lean Startup, and one of the suggestions was to kind of test ideas as much as you can early on. So we just went to farmers markets and just started talking about what kombucha is, talking about why we were drinking it, which is the whole sobriety thing, which ended up sticking. So that Dry July has stayed with me for 9 years now.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Thanks. I don't even miss it. Like, I don't even think about it.
Same.
It's once you get through the first 6 months. And we've met a lot of other people who are just like, oh, yeah, I hear it's good for my gut, or I hear it's, I drink it instead of beer came up a lot. And so I guess because a lot of people will look at alcohol if they just don't feel good. Like if they just don't end up feeling that great, or they stop beer because of gluten, or there was just a few reasons why people started adding kombucha. So we had lots of vegan customers, we had lots of celiac customers, and farmers markets allowed us to work out what flavors to do. And we just really went with what's popular. Like we tried everything and then just stuck with what was working. And then we walked into a supermarket like the Boat Shed in Claremont, like Cottesloe, one of the best sort of gourmet supermarkets. And we just went, we would like to be on your shelves. How do we do that? And then they were like, well, you need to get a barcode, you need to come here and do a tasting on the weekend and, put it in a box this size. And then we just treated our first 25 customers like that. Like, what do you want us to do? And then we'll do that.
Yeah.
And I could fast forward 9 years, we got 1,000 stockists around the country, and we're in Coles and Woolworths, and it's the same conversation. Walked in there yesterday to Woolworths and just went, this is what we're doing. It's really popular. We've got some graphs to show you, but what do you need as well? Because we're still just a couple of blokes in Perth, but we know we can do it. So just tell us, what do you like to see? And then let's see if we can do that.
Yeah, and I love what you've mentioned there as well, because I think some business owners will, get so consumed with just the doing that they forget who they're actually serving, and don't go back to saying to that person, well, hey, what is it that you like? Does this work for you? How can I better serve you? So I think it's great that you guys, even after 9 years, you still incorporate that into your strategy.
Just this morning, I open up my emails and the first thing is 2 or 3, oh, hey, this went wrong. And when something goes wrong, I go, okay, so it kind of has to sit in a corner of, when I've got the time, we've got to make sure that that's never a thing that goes wrong again. So and it's all, across all sorts of things. But yeah, there's definitely our path hasn't been to get as big as possible, as fast as possible. It's kind of be as good as we can possibly be right now, as far as doing business with, as a product. And I think that's probably a time frame thing in our mindset. So I'm not trying to build, I wasn't trying to build this in 5 years. I'm trying to build this over 30 years. So, because I think we kind of struck that early mission, right? That whole sobriety thing and being in pubs, we ended up forming a mission statement that's just been a really good guiding force. So it's to change Australia's drinking culture. And that involves a few things. That's not saying that people should be sober. It's actually just saying that the way, if you want to go out and have a drink with a friend, we want to change what that is. We want it to be social, we want it to be healthy, and we want it to be full of joy. And we do that with our products, right? So we are making that person who is trying to be healthy at the same time as socialize have a really good option. And we're also trying to help that person who's had 5 beers have a spacer. Oh, now that I've stopped drinking, I don't have to stop being social. I don't have to stop being out here. I'm going to keep drinking. I'm just not going to drink beer. It's just kind of helping be the right lubricant for drinking culture. And then at the same time, the way we look at drinks generally is, how can we adapt them and improve them? Be a part of the progression of what our industry is. And that's been a real guiding force. So by activating that mission in our business of changing drinking culture, we look at change all the time. How can we change for the better? Versus how we can change to, I guess, be more profitable, or how to change to take more from something. It's really about progressive improvement. And it's a mission that people buy in on. So when our team members join us, they're like, this is our mission. If this isn't your mission, you can't join. There's not actually room for people who don't see this mission as being important. But it's a bit ambiguous. You can go, you're on the sobriety train, or maybe you're on the weight loss train, or maybe you're on you just want to see better options than Coca-Cola. It's a pretty broad mission, but we are all very passionate here. So, and we treat our job as it is something we're trying to achieve every day.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because like I say, a lot of our clients that we work with, they don't have their vision or their mission clearly defined for their brand. And it's the driving force, as you've just said. It's, been the catapult for everything you guys have done, and even with your team members, if it aligns or it doesn't align, it's really important to have that defined.
Yeah, I've tested it a few times, and sometimes people have been like, oh, we're not really a sobriety company. I'm like, no, we're not. It is broad, but whenever I go to review it and I have a question, I go, I'm still really passionate about that, because even as we've matured, at different points I've gone, geez, beverages is just unsustainable from a packaging perspective. And then I go, oh, okay, so that's how we got to change it now. So we have to look at what we can do there. Like, what are all the elements that we can do without changing what we are as a business, in terms of like, we still make drinks. So, but what can we do to improve? Or at another time, it was like, you know, at one point it was like, oh, there's so much sugar in drinks. Like, you know, I was reading some Australian Bureau of Statistics reports, and it's like, oh my God, there's so much sugar in alcohol. And there's so many people trying to lose weight. Like, that was the most recent research I looked into in health outcomes. It's like, overwhelmingly, the number one thing most people want to achieve is weight control, either put on a little bit of weight if you're underweight, or most people lose weight.
Want to lose, yeah.
And it's like, sugar is in everything. So it's like, if you can control that, it's an important part of our progression. Yeah, and then at other times it's been culture. Like, I've recently come back from this expo. I've got to meet lots of other competitor businesses, and there was some real overwhelming feedback around workplace culture. Some places are terrible to work at. And I go, okay, we're going to be the one drink company in Australia that is known for culture. Everyone that works here loves it, and everybody that works here moves on to something better because they've been developed. So yeah, it's kind of like, and that still all ties into mission of like, we have to be willing to change. We have to be willing to change culture around our industry and around what we do as a drink company.
And have you found your brand has affected your overall business success?
Good question. So really good question. It's probably one of the first things we spent a bit of money on. So like, it took us ages to come up with the name, and even I'm more comfortable with the name in recent years than I am at the start, because I was like, Kommunity Brew is really hard to say on the phone. Like, it's such a
Kommunity Brew,
yeah. And then I think as the word community has become an important word in just people's dialogue, like, it's actually a really commonly used word in the last few years. It's actually made it easier for people to connect what we are. So we first spent on brand by going to just like a local designer saying, this is what sort of want in our logo, and we were pretty hands-on. And then over time, as we've had more people join us as either our staff or subcontractors, there's been more broader input as to what our brand is. And that's actually been really awesome to see how people interpret internally what our brand is and what assets we need. And it's very clear to me now, because we are doing an equity crowdfunder campaign, which wraps up in June. And we've done one last year as well, and that added another layer to the community element, right? So the community started off as, we will always make things conscientious of what it does to our community. That's like number one. Like, we're brewers, but the community is kind of always the focal point for how we make decisions. Can't keep everybody happy, but we can sure as heck try to understand what makes people happy and how we can serve. Over time, it evolved to, we need to make sure that we're responsible across different parts, like the environment's a part of our community, our fermentation, like the microorganism, is a part of it, our local government, our consumers, our retailers. Let's be really cooperative to achieve things. And then the equity crowdfunders, just to bring a circle, was like, we're going to invite people to participate as owners, so that I am accountable to you, a potential investor, as I work for you. Like, I even phrase it that way. I say, be a co-owner. You can be my boss. You might have $100 worth of shares or $30,000 worth of shares, but I essentially am working for a collective and not an individual, and certainly not a conglomerate. So branding has been really cool. What's ended up happening though, and one of our problems, Tracy, is we've learned that new products don't always fit our aesthetic and our core visual and language for Kommunity Brew. And so we've created secondary sibling brands. So
Yes.
our company actually owns like 5 brands in the market.
I see. Right.
And then, so it's become a house of brands.
Yes.
And that's been the challenge to that is we're always stepping in on this community brew first foot. Like that's the first conversation we have with people. And then we go, and here's like our Brady Bunch of products. Like here's X, Y, and Z that we also make that have like success in their own right. And it's kind of, I even think about it as a family, because we have this Cold Matter brand, which is cold brew coffee and iced tea. And that's like the alternative teenage young adult brand. Like they probably have a nose ring. They probably both skateboard and play video games. Like they're a bit grungier, and like they have a playlist. And then we have Sips Sparkling Water, which is really like just a fun in the sun. I go to the beach. I have an esky full of sparkling water. I'm light. I'm refreshing. I'm easy. I'm breezy. And that's like a different family member to the grunge sort of like alternative.
Yes, your different avatars. Yeah.
Yeah. So then that introduced avatars about a year ago, because we knew our community brew avatar was very much so like the advocate.
Yes.
And maybe even an innocent and an advocate. And then we went, oh, Cold Matter is totally a renegade, like a full like outlawish, esoteric wizard person.
Yeah.
And then Sip Sparkling Water is like the everyday person. I just want to sit on my, floating bed in my pool and just have a sip and just chill out. So getting all those people under one roof though has been it's been a big adjustment. But what helps is that there are some core tenets that they all stick by. So even the renegade's a renegade against sugar. Cold Matter's pushing back on what you think iced tea should be like, and we're saying we do it this way. Pushing back is what you think an iced coffee is going to taste like, and we do it like this. And so, and then Sips is like, it's easy being clean. Like it's easy being healthy.
Yeah.
Like don't think about it too much. It's simple.
Yeah, and still glamorous in your pool.
In your pool, just like take it light,
That's all me. I love it. Is that at Woolies? Is that at Woolies, by the way? I need to get some of that. Jeez.
Yeah, so Sip Sparkling's Woolworths Metro on the East Coast.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And Coles Local. So that's actually, and really that's an East Coast, even with the brands, right? They succeed in different areas. So Sip Sparkling Water is massively in Melbourne and New South Wales and Queensland. Community Brew is massively WA and Queensland. And then Cold Matter is like New South Wales and Melbourne. Like they're different because the cities have
Yes, it's kind of like they've got different avatars and even where they're placed as well. It's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. When I sit down with a buyer and I have to prioritize what I present, I do lead with Community Brew, and I go, the way, like, let me just tell you a bit about our company. We think about drinks as if it was Easter and you had the whole family over and everybody needs something. And you've got, the vegan niece or nephew who's gone plant-based, and they have a different set of needs to the Gen X mum and dad, to the baby booming grandparents. And like we try to look at as many people at that table and offer them something that's progressive for them. And
and really tailored.
Yeah, and really tailored. So like you could have Cold Matter at a table of Community Brew. They're very different in what they are, but there's sort of that underlying of like, I should be a little bit healthier.
Yes,
is there
that core value
presented in different language.
And again, it goes back to your sense of community. You're kind of tailoring for everyone and bringing them all together at the same time.
Yeah, which is really like the probably the shadow, or like the weakness to that is do we lose specificity? And we don't. We are very clearly a drinks company. Like we make drinks, we make them ourselves. Our core competency and assets and efficiency is in the manufacturing of drinks. Like We started off with something very complicated. Kombucha is super hard to make at
So I've
scale.
heard, yeah.
Yeah, it's very complex. It's wonderful to study.
Yeah.
And we built our infrastructure around this very difficult product. And then products that are less complicated to manufacture, we add into our chain. So in that way, it's funny because like people kind of think, oh, you're a kombucha company that does all these other things. We're like, we're actually a drinks company. It just so happens that our kombucha is the most successful product.
Yeah. Definitely. It's a bit like Coca-Cola, right? They've got all different avenues to their overall, brand house as such.
And that's the vision, is like Coca-Cola serving your person who just doesn't care about what they put in their bodies. Totally fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to care about everything. You don't.
Yeah.
Like as a human being, everyone's awesome for caring about the things they care about. I'm not asking everybody to be healthier.
Yeah.
But they absolutely do not create anything for the healthful person. Whatsoever.
It's purely marketing.
Yeah.
I think it's very marketing and profit-based.
Yeah, purely marketing, profit-based, market share, low cost, yada, yada. Nostalgia. You could say Coca-Cola has massive nostalgia. And so we're the opposite. We go, well, we only make healthy things to fit all the same occasions. And that will reflect a bit in your price and your quality, but it won't be a gigantic leap. It's just where they really, 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 like they would have, in terms of, if we're like for like companies, they're I guess like the way that even just the way they approach environment, the way they approach like sourcing, it's all very, very different. But I'd like to, the ambition is to go over the next 30 years, I would like us to be next to Coca-Cola.
Great, that's a great ambition.
Well, for Australia, like not Coca-Cola global, but just Australia, I would like us to really be on their radar. I'd like them to go, yeah, we are worried about market share because of these guys.
Yeah, definitely. And Mason, one of the things I really enjoyed obviously about seeing you on Food Stars is that you do have that real drive, and also one of your core values is your family, which really spoke volumes. And I could see when you present, you're very passionate and very driven. Have you always been that way?
So I grew up in a family business like myself. So I worked with my uncles, my aunties, my cousins growing up. Both my parents are business owners, not necessarily successful ones, but they've both like run businesses and seen the highs and lows of that.
Yeah.
So I always knew that I wanted to be a part of a big family. And I wanted to have a big, like, I just wanted to, like, it's just been a really core value for me.
Yeah.
And I guess the drive and the passion, yes, I've always been probably on the overworker side of things, because for me, like, I was very normal for my dad or mum to come home at 9 o'clock at night after a big day worth of work, and it was never seen as a problem. Like I always knew that they were working really hard to provide, and I always knew that they had a lot of responsibility on their plate. And I think that probably drove work ethic. Equally, they did it all selflessly. Like it was not for, it wasn't so that they could have this giant ego. And that was very, very obvious to me on the TV show. Being there, I was like, I'm totally here. I kept saying, like, talking about my team, talking about my wife, talking about my son, like, and it kind of drilled it into me too, because I'm getting like asked these questions. I'm going, oh yeah, like I love business as an activity.
Yeah.
I'm motivated to do it, but the end goal is very clearly a community-based one.
And does that go back to your why, as in obviously changing the drinking culture, in Australia, and then I guess your family forms part of that why as well?
Yeah. So if you start to scratch at the surface of like the food system and nutrition, you find like there has to be a lot of discipline on the individual to know how to be healthy, because a lot of the things you expect to give you honest feedback around health and well-being are really ambiguous and unhelpful. GPs very rarely, like a GP very rarely gives you good nutrition advice.
That is so true. And it's just a dollar sign, really. Sorry, but You think they mean well by you, but you actually, the sicker you are, the better it is for them, I think.
Yeah, I just think like I've got really close friends that are GPs, and it's just when I was studying nutrition, I was saying, whoa, you have to like really get to know your body, and you really have to get to know food and what's in it. Like because food companies sneak things in all the time. Like it's easy to have things like we don't talk about trans fats a lot in Australia, but they're like they're not recommended in any dietary guidelines in the world. They're known to be carcinogenic. Like it's very well understood. The recommendation in US and Australia is 0 trans fats, but they're in like every baked good in the supermarket.
They are,
So
how does that work?
Yeah, well, there's a gap between what we know about clinical nutrition and where our food system regulation is. So food system regulation is also very unpoliced, which is to say that someone can go create a product tomorrow. It can be on a shelf and it won't get taken off that shelf until someone does a formal complaint. And even then, it probably won't get enforced. So there has to be like hundreds of thousands of complaints, and someone has to get really sick for there to be any enforcement. It's really bad.
Wow.
It's
that
really
is,
bad. So in terms of the reason I love this space is like I can't take on all food, but at least for drinks, I can take out the artificial colors, I can take out the artificial sweeteners, I can take out if it's just too sweet a product, it's too sugary, it's addictive, I can wind that back. If it's not providing any nutritional benefit, I can make sure there is one there. So there's like a tangible impact I can do. And what that changes is what my son will have when he's an adult. If I create brands that last 30, 40 or 50, 100 years, if I can create formidable brands, it changes his inherited food system. And then I raise the bar on what other crap can enter the system. Because if there's a very strong, formidable brand in, say, iced tea, you can't just go launch a sugar bomb and throw it in there and think it's going to have if I've already got the market share and I'm a healthful premium product, like try and beat me, you sugary garbage. It's kind of
Lipton's iced tea.
That's the kind of the protectionism that kind of starts to happen within the brand's action. It's not it's about putting pressure on the industry in a positive way to make it advance. So I didn't get into another food. I just saw drinking as one that could be achievable, and it's progressed so much. Like since we've started, non-alcoholic beer has become a movement. We opted not to get into that. It was one of those things where I was just so glad to see that there were 2 companies that did really well. And I went, that's exactly what I want. I want more people more brands to get on the health train so that the system changes. And if they don't do it and people are dragging their feet in an area, my job as a business operator is to look at the opportunity and go, that's where we should act, because we can have a formidable presence there. But if there was someone else already there, I'd go, well, there's no use for us being there. They're already doing it. So yeah.
And Mason, why is it that you think the drinking culture, whether it's in South Africa, New Zealand, Ireland, Australia, why do you think it is such a big thing?
Okay. I think the social element was really critical. So a pub, like going somewhere, like if you don't go to church, then where do you go to decompress and unwind and relate and talk and swap stories, just moan and vent. And I think pubs really do that, and alcohol works as a lubricant to achieve it. The drawback to that is alcohol is never useful to your system, ever. Like it's never useful. The red wine I think red wine has like a resveratrol argument. It's useless, more harm than good. It's not about taking that enjoyment away, but I think that drinking culture started from socialization, and alcohol serves as a lubricant. But my experience not drinking is that I'm the last one standing at the table. Basically, I'm keeping the night going. So it's like, let's keep but like if you're an extrovert, you don't need the alcohol.
No, one definitely doesn't. And that was a bit of a mindset shift for myself because, I did associate that I needed alcohol to enjoy myself. And then when I stopped, obviously just changing that mindset, yeah, I'm still the last one standing, which is great. And then I Uber everyone home. So
It's actually way safer for everyone to have a chaperone. Like,
yeah,
I've had a few bucks parties in the
gosh.
last couple of years that I've gone to, and I've gone, "Oh, you guys can
Yeah,
really go on a tear, and I'll just make sure you get
yeah,
home." And that's
yeah,
really
yeah.
good. Or I can de-escalate a situation, or we can make sure if you really want to do something, we can make sure it happens. Like, you have someone in your corner.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think like there are a lot of cultures that also just don't drink alcohol. So as we see
Mm,
a rise of Islamic-based cultures,
mm,
it's really great to see that culturally alcohol is not present, and it just so it doesn't enter their social circumstances, which fits in really well with what we want to do as a company because we're like, it's good. There's more and more people. There's so
yeah.
many reasons people don't drink. There's so
Mm,
many reasons people socialize, but there's so many reasons people don't drink. Health and well-being, like as in like feeling better,
yeah.
weight
Mm,
loss, cost saving, cultural reasons, potentially trauma or abuse,
mm,
like practicality. How easy is it to have a hangover on a Monday and then go be a high performing individual? How
oh,
easy this got me?
yeah.
How is it being hungover on a Saturday morning and having your kids scream in your ear? That's tough.
Oh gosh, yeah, that would be very tough.
So it's like there's lots of motivators to change the substance, but
Mm,
the circumstance and the occasion is awesome. Catch up with your friends
yes.
and have a drink. Like
Yeah.
that part is fine. What you drink needs.
Mm, yeah, definitely. And Mason, have you dealt with any challenges that have come your way? Have you got any advice for our listeners, as those challenges arise, how do you kind of navigate through those?
Oh, so good. Bigger's not always better. So the drive to grow a business to be bigger is not necessarily better because you also increase your problems.
Mm,
So that's a really obvious one to me. It's like finding the balance between growing something to be more sustainable or more productive or growing something versus like making it better. So it
mm,
depends on what the motivator is for growth and how the growth's achieved. That's been a real big learning for me because this last year has been a massive growth bender. Like we doubled our company in a year. And
fantastic.
thank you. But what I see at the end of that year is I go, the things that we don't do well are just bigger problems now.
Mm,
So like
yeah,
on the good side, revenue's great, gross profit's great,
fab.
net profit's good. Oh, that's good. Like we have a bigger brand, we're more recognizable. On the other
Yes.
side, our delivery delays are up. Our problems with
Mm,
deliveries are up. Like like there's things that aren't working because they haven't been scalable because they were bad systems. So I think that whole working out what you do poorly is really important to reflect on in the growth journey, probably earlier. Mind you, that's always a bit of a
mm,
dilemma as a founder. I wish I knew this problem 6 months ago
yeah,
or had the time to
same.
do something about it. But
Yeah, you and me both.
so that's one challenge, is bigger's not always better. And the other one, and this is probably just a real insight. I used to kick myself a lot for not getting the biggest accounts earlier, like getting Coles and Woolworths like
Oh,
years ago. I was like, why didn't I go to Coles and
yeah,
Woolworths earlier or something? I'm so glad I didn't because
yeah.
one, you can fail fast if you don't get it right. But
Mm,
really, there's so much my businesses like mine, like manufacturing businesses or brand building, requires so much story and infrastructure and material and development, like so much time. There's so many things to build
mm, there
that if you
is.
try to do it quickly, you just create problems. And if you try to do it quickly, you simply won't achieve everything you need to achieve for it to be really formidable. I keep coming back to this word like
Mm,
formidable. How can I make a really
mm,
stable base that's hard to shake? And as a result of doing it over 9 years and having another 30 years worth of vision, I
yeah.
think gives me the breathing room to go, I don't need to be successful in a year. I want this year to be more successful than the last in terms of some measures, but I won't achieve the vision next year.
Mm.
I won't do it the year after. It will really take me a long time to get there. But that gives me time to do things well and build properly. So time. A lot of founders just think they're going to do it in 2 years or 3 years. And I go, don't. Like, you got to give yourself 10. Give yourself 10.
So much pressure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I like that you've highlighted that, because I think a lot of us, we want this instant gratification. We want our revenue to skyrocket, we want our brand up there. It has to happen in a year or before I'm 40 or whatever the case may be. That was one of my goals. But I really like what you've highlighted there. It's about the long-term game. It's not just about, achieving everything overnight, and actually enjoying that process as well.
Very few people have I met. Like, sometimes people split their journey too. They go, oh, I had a startup. I've started to do this in myself. I go, oh, I had 7 years like startup.
Yeah.
I've had 2 years commercial is kind of how I think about it. And those first 7 years was like, everything from working from free to picking things up at thrift stores to just really being as gritty and resourceful and as cost saving as possible to kind of work out what we were really good at doing and getting something really strong and clear. And in the last 2 years, it was like, just commercialize it, send it, make it go for growth, like fuel on the fire, like momentum. So, having split that journey, I go, well, if you're a founder and you're starting with like, I don't know, maybe you got $10,000 to kick off your idea. That's not a lot of capital. You'll get very little for that amount of money. So the rest of the investment is in your labor for however long you can sustain that. And I think that's really underestimated by founders, is they go, oh, I didn't realize that I'll go for 2 years with no pay. It's like, probably.
Yeah.
Like, you have to, like, let's say you would get paid, I don't know, 80 grand out there in the market or whatever it is you get paid. Maybe it's that. 80 grand plus the 10,000 you start off with is 90. That's not a lot to get any idea off the ground.
No.
So, like, yeah, you're going to need to take the first year with no pay. You're probably going to need to take the second year with no pay, because that's still only 170 grand. So it's like, come on, like, you're going to have to keep going with this investment. But that's what it is. You have to look at it as an investment, and you have to keep doubly deciding, going, should I double down because it's growing, or is it really actually gone? Everything I put in goes back. Like, what is it? Which is hard when you're starting out, because you don't know any of this. But I definitely, that time frame is a real important adjustment. And if you give yourself more time, you remove a huge challenge in your mentality.
That's so true. Did you save like a nest egg before you kind of started, or did you guys just hit the ground running? Because I mean, it's expensive to be alive, so you still have to pay a mortgage and eat and all that sort of thing. How did you guys do it?
I was really savage in my work ethic, like to an unhealthy level. Like, I had a full-time job during the day and a full-time job at night. So I would work my 40 hours, probably 45 hours during the day, and I'd go work at bars at night before I started business. And that's because I'm really social at work too. So I was like, all my friends are at work anyway. So I'll just like socialize with my friends and work and get paid to do it. And then like I just had two friend circles. I did that for about 5 years. And then I was like, okay, now I was lucky. I'd earned about $30,000 in the kitty. And I went, I'm going to put 16 to start Kommunity Brew. And then I'll leave the remainder as like living expenses. And then I just ratcheted my hours part-time down for about a year. So I just took less and less work on for a year, gave my previous employer a really long window for me to phase out, because I was general manager, so they needed that time too, and it suited me, so everybody won. And then, I chewed through those savings in about a year, and then we just started. The business paid for living expenses, so rent, food, phone, internet, like. And it wasn't until we got past all the living expenses that we went, cool, now we have social spending.
Yes, yeah.
Now we have that, like, now we have insurance. So, but like I, even with our first employees that we took on, I was like, it's a startup, guys. Like, what do you need to live versus what do you know you're worth? Okay, cool. If you can work with us for what you can live on, we will work to get you to where you want to be as fast as possible. And that will be based on your performance, our performance, and the merging of the two. and I'm willing to push a little further than our comfort to make you have a sense of like, you know, that we are prioritizing you, you know, we are trusting in you. So that was a hard conversation, because a lot of these managers that we have now left major companies. And so I was like, take a 20% haircut, come join me. We're way better to work for.
Yeah. That's confidence.
And like, you know, that promotion you've missed out on, like the last 3 years running, you'll have it here, because I tell you now, I can't do all the job work myself. So it's like, you know, let's do it that way. And then at the right time, we offered equity and said, hey, like, the part of your package, you're going to get equity. Now that we know that you're here for the long term, and you know that we are looking to reward you and build you, this is your equity package. And yeah, that so as far as paying, like, in a way, our core staff have had the same sort of, not quite the same, they didn't have to work for free for like 2 years, but the same sort of expectation of like, it's going to be uncomfortable before it gets more comfortable. Yeah.
And I think that speaks back to your branding, you know, for someone to accept those terms, one's brand and mission and vision has to speak volumes in order for them to commit to something like that. Because like you said, they could just, you know, stay at the other job, get paid 20% more and potentially have increases along the way. So I think it really speaks volumes that your team firmly believes in what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we pull each other up on it too, because that, I said before, like community can mean a few different things. Like some people feel like community is more of like a social equity piece, or like a diversity piece, or an environmental piece, or like community is quite and it can be a bit ambiguous in a good way, but we all know what it means. Like, it all means like, well, we're all working together on something. It's a unifying feeling. So what we need to do is find the bits that don't feel unified and bring them in. So, and it requires communication to it. So, you know, communication and unity kind of make community, right? So it's like, the idea is we will discuss things, the hard topics, as like people, not just like a company. So a lot of my conversations are like, okay, Director Mason says this. Your colleague Mason feels this way. And so let's try and get those two to work together, because it has to commercially work, but it has to work culturally for you as well, for the situation.
And Mason, have you found your own mindsets changed over the last 9 years? I guess from that person who was in Hawaii and, you know, went to that kombucha bar to where you are now. I guess 2-part question. How has it changed? And how have you, I guess, really worked on your professional development as well?
I used to really dislike self-promotion when I first started. I didn't want to come across as arrogant, or like prophetic, or like higher than thou, or like anything along those lines. Like, I didn't want to be like, being a spokesperson to me was like a very confronting position. And in the last couple of years, it's really been pulled out of me to go, you can, like, I know I can communicate a lot of the elements very well for the brands, and I should do that. Like, that's a service I actually should provide, because the brand needs that. Not the public, they don't necessarily need it, but like the brand needs a voice, and I best voice the brands a lot of the time. That, and then understanding that some the judgment of arrogance is usually from a viewer. Like, it's not necessarily coming from my core and my heart. I'm not doing it to say, hey, Mason's so great. I'm talking about the thing that I operate with my team. That those sorts of stigmas, those sorts of judgments usually come from an audience, and then that's I can't appease everybody. When you're in a public space and you've got 1,000 people looking at you, there is always a people that are miffed, and that's just what a auditorium will do. So that's been a big shift as to how important that is for the company to succeed, and that I should look at it as a skill and a benefit more than and a service, rather than, you know, it just ego fluffing. The other thing is that it's a bit about the industry. It's both more corrupted than I thought going into it, and more hopeful. Like,
right.
there are so many founders that I see now, and I feel like an old kook sometimes because I'm like 9 years in, and I meet a lot of, and like, although I'm 33, I'm 9 years in, so I'm like, in some of these circles, I'm relatively close in age. Like a lot of founders around 28, 29. So I'm not that much older, but I'm a lot older in terms of business. So they've had a career and then had business for 6 months. And I go, you're a shining star. Like, you could be amazing. This is going to be so good. We need you in this system. I want to do everything I can to help you thrive in this system, because there are companies out there that are so just so opposed to progress. And there's so much to disrupt, and there's so much counterfeit, and there's so much, like, the fact that counterfeit is even in my industry is strange. Like honey sometimes isn't even honey sometimes just like fructose. Like, there's so much, like, the more I learn, and it comes across all the time. I was at this Naturally Good Expo, and I was meeting like chili oil companies, and they're like, oh, did you know all the other chili oils use canola? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. And they're like, we only use olive oil. I'm like, that makes sense to me. Why is there so much X, Y, and Z in your space? And they're like, price, rigidity, stubbornness, just not caring. So a shift for me is just how extreme the ends are. It's both lots of hope, but there's also like a heap more wrong with food that can change.
Yes. We had Paloma from My Gene on the show, and she was saying some of the salmon, they'll even like dye it. So it's not actually that natural color. It's obviously where they farm them, like mass produce them, and then they dye the salmon. I was horrified because as a consumer, you don't even think about this stuff. Meanwhile, you're actually ingesting it and it's becoming part of you, and it's filled with who knows what. So it's actually quite scary.
They pick the color. Like, there's options. How pink do you want? Yeah, there's like different types of, like, Alaskan salmon is this, and this is this, and this.
Actually,
and that's
I couldn't believe it.
That's very obvious when you look at the largest end, because I kind of have like a begin with the end in mind principle of, like, I want to run this business as if it's the 30 years in the future business, but with the resources of what we have now. So then, but when I go and look at these businesses that have been running for 50 years and the giants, titans of industry, I go, just some of the things that they do and how they affect consumers is really tapped, really warped, like really just the wrong way. It was clearly approved for a P&L decision and wasn't approved as a stakeholder decision of going, it's very obvious.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so glad to hear that you are stepping more into that space of, being an advocate for your brand, but also in the health space, because I started my health journey about 2 years ago. And I've also learned, like, there's so much misleading information, big brands that you think you can trust. And, it says it's healthy or, green, and you turn it over and it's got a whole bunch of crap in it. So I think it's really good that you are, you're the real deal, and you are stepping into that space and shining light on things that, the community needs to be educated on.
Thanks, Tracy. I mean, your situation is, that's every adult. As soon as you start the journey, like, let's say you went vegetarian. Can I ask, do you have like
of course,
a paradigm that you follow, or like is it keto inspired or something?
I do intermittent, it's more restricted feeding. So I'll eat between 11 and 7. But for me, it actually started with my drinking. I was just feeling so lethargic, so like tired the whole time. So I stopped that. And then I just really, I worked with Paloma from My Gene. We really got clear on what works for my body, what doesn't. She educated me on all the, again, crap that is in certain foods. You think, oh yeah, it's healthy. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, there's so much sugar in it. And I was never one to be able to lose weight. I always struggled. So whilst losing weight was one of the focuses, it was more about just, feeling optimal and feeling better, because when you do run a business, it requires a lot of you. And if you're constantly, like I said earlier, if you're hungover or you're constantly feeling tired, or how are you supposed to lead anyone if you're constantly in this cloud of fog that you're kind of working through? So for me, it's restricted feeding. It was removing my excuses from my life, get up, go exercise, not I'll sleep until 7 and do it later. And then later came and I never did it. So it was really just, making no more excuses and just really pushing myself to do it when I, go run or go do something, even when I didn't want to. So, and it's been life changing. Like, I'm running, I was never a runner. I mean, I guess I was 20 kilos overweight, but still, it's just great to see once you start the things you're actually capable of, and not from just a physical point of view, from a mindset point of view,
Yeah.
It's really been great.
It's it sounds very empowering. Like, it sounds like you like being able to make one change enables you to make another change, which enables you to make another change. And then you realize that change is actually always within your control.
So true. And I think especially with the drinking, we always think it's not. And you're always so scared of what is everyone else going to think. And I just got to a stage where I was like, well, I actually don't care if you're going to give me flack because I'm having a Coke Zero or I'm having water. Like, I literally don't care. And overall, people have actually been really supportive. Like, you do get the odd weird eye when you say you don't drink, but I'm like, this is my journey. This is what I'm choosing to do. And it's been a profound journey and very empowering, like you say.
Oh, kudos to you! Like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, in your community, while it's been it sounds like a self-awareness journey, it actually empowers your circle as well. And they go, someone might just need to quit smoking in that circle, and if they see you change one thing and then change another thing and make change really like achievable, it helps them change something else.
It does.
So I've seen this in my team, that people quit smoking. And have you noticed this in your circle? Have you noticed that as you've made some changes, like families start to think about it?
It has. Yeah, they almost like it gives them permission to do it as well. Like, it's almost like, some people might not be brave enough to try it, but then when you kind of lead the way, they follow suit, or, what are you doing? And it's just great to be able to help someone through that health journey. And again, worked a lot with Paloma, and I have her on the podcast because I'm just so passionate about this space. And that's why I love what you're doing, because I really think it is a part of society that needs to be disrupted.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, and we've all got, like, it's not the other side of it is that some people do go down the path of becoming too perfect, trying to like fit this like optimized self, or like trying to treat their system like it's fully like a CPU that you just dial in. And there's like some fun to that. And I think that's the reason why we haven't driven our brand to being a sobriety brand, because it's like really not about making someone feel like on the outside, because that's how that sober, non-drinker, non-smoker, smoker feels like. Those people are specific, and everyone knows that feeling of being awkwardly on the outside. So ours is an inclusion movement, and I think that's so effective for health. So I was vegan for several years, and one of the things that I noticed was that really summoned a lot of intense conversation around what is being vegetarian or vegan. And although I'm not like plant-based now, eat lots of plants, but not of that vein. That I think that's one of the unhealthier parts of any social change, is making people an outsider and saying my way, like you can't be my friend if you drink because I don't drink. Like, it's like, no, you will get far better results if you work with people. And definitely. Let your results speak as well. Like, you've lost weight and you're active and you're living this great way. Perhaps you're smiling more. Maybe that's it.
Yes, I am. And I'm not hungover, which is great. So, it's really been so rewarding.
She's always so upbeat.
So much so. We actually went to a wedding, and obviously everyone partied and stuff. For the next day, we were up at like 5 a.m. going for a walk, and like all happened, everyone was sleeping in. It's like, what a contrast. Mason, I'd love to know, what's the bravest thing you've ever done?
Ooh, oh, that's cool. Okay, so I would have been. It was early on in the. I was probably 24, and I went and did a 4-day solo hike out in the Blue Mountains. So I was going through this stage of like, I just stopped being vegetarian. I went through a breakup and my business was starting, but it was really hard and I just run out of money. And I was like sort of on vapors in terms of my resources. And I was like, I just need to go prove I can do something. I need to go do something that's hard and just do it on my own and then find out how I go. So, my mother at the time was living out in Blackheath in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales, outside of Sydney. And she said, oh, there's like lots of trails out here. Like, do you want to come and do some trails? And I was like, yeah, I think that's the one. So I found this one. It was called the 8-foot track. And I can't remember the history of it, but basically it's a trail that's mostly made out of a waterfall. Then you go through some farmlands, and then you go up. You go basically down a mountain, through a valley, up a mountain, and you get to this place called the Jenolan Caves, which is one of the sort of oldest cave systems in Australia. It's a bit of a sacred spot for the Indigenous. And then you come back. And I just thought I'd do that for 4 days with just like take all my own food, and I did it in winter. And like what probably made the travel harder than it needed to be was on day one when it rained, I actually fell down the waterfall and like just basically fell off the mountain. And luckily I was like halfway down, but like I just basically like just rolled.
Plummeted. Oh my gosh, on day one.
On day one. So like I got down and I was like, oh, this is pretty steep. And I was like, it's very steep. And I was like, it's like raining and this was turning into a waterfall. And I was like, this is hectic. And then I just slipped and just like cascaded down. And then I was like laying there and I was like, nothing's broken. This is amazing. I was like, my legs are fine, my arms fine.
It must have been quite a fall, yeah.
Oh, I was so lucky. And then I was laying there, and they have these birds in New South Wales called lyrebirds, and they're like peacocks, but they're brown. Anyway, they're very pretty, and they make these really cool sounds. And like one of the things I wanted to see on my trip was like, oh, I hope I see a lyrebird while I'm around because I know they're in the area. And one just like hops on me and then like walks off me and then starts going down the trail. And I'm like, what was that?
Oh
what?
My goodness.
And then I just like follow this bird. And I get back on the trail and I'm like, this is amazing. And so then I continued. I continued this hike, just a bit bruised. And then, finished it up, went to the Jenolan Caves, made my way back the next day, went back up that same trail. And kind of was just like, I can do it. I can go out to the wilderness. I can fall off a mountain. I can walk.
Yeah, wow, you're very lucky to still be here. And Mason, I'd love to ask, food stars with Gordon Ramsay, I can just imagine that's like a whole nother level of pressure. Is that true, or is that like a perception about the show and the drama that's kind of the side of it?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of pressure. Definitely a lot of pressure filming. So, it took about 5 weeks to film. You get the information, you have to. All sorts of pressure. So even just like from the start, like having an idea and then presenting that in front of two people you admire and respect and a bit starstruck in front of as well.
You would be, yeah.
Actually, I'll tell you a funny story, even how it started.
Yeah.
I was sitting on my couch and my son was next to me and we were watching YouTube because he loves cooking and he watches a guy that does he recreates famous chef dishes. And so we were watching one, they were doing a Gordon Ramsay dish, and then Gordon Ramsay tasted it and he made his comments. Right. And I said to Clay, I was like, I wonder what it takes to meet Gordon Ramsay.
Oh my goodness.
What does it take in the world? 2 months later, I'm pitching to Gordon Ramsay. I had no idea the show was a thing. Wow. It came up in my Instagram feed. I said, oh, I may as well give it a go. It's a bit coincidental. Yeah. Then they're interviewing me. They're saying you should come on the show. And then I'm on the show. So it was like very smooth, very fast. And then I'm calling my son being like, I just met Gordon Ramsay. Isn't this ridiculous? So then the pressure of the show was how does am I going to lose my temper? Am I going to fumble? Yeah. Am I going to be given tasks I'm totally incompetent at? Am I going to do well in the ones I am competent at? How does it all get presented? All of that stuff was really nerve-wracking.
It would have been.
And the result was, I was actually really pleased. Like the whole story, the whole experience isn't captured in television.
Yeah.
No one can replicate the hours of time I have in my head on each day doing it. But I was really pleased with how it came out.
And what a great experience as well. And your son was impressed?
No, we weren't. No.
Oh, what?
No.
Oh, damn, sorry.
The first 4 or 5 episodes, he was like, "What are you doing? Oh my god!"
Oh wow, he runs a tough ship.
Really,
yeah.
No, he was supportive, but like he was critical as well. And I was like, "Oh man, it's it's TV. Like it's what it is." But at the end, he was like, he really thought I was going to win. Like he was so in my corner, and then and so was my wife, and we watched it with all my team. I had 30 of my team there.
Cool.
And everyone was like, yeah, everyone felt a bit disappointed that we didn't get there, but they were rapt that it was at least like I didn't come across as a villain or something.
Yes, and I'm sure in so many other ways you're going to win, Mason, like, just having that experience. And it sounds like I don't know if you believe in like your vibrations and stuff. It sounds like what you put out to the universe seems to just come to you really quickly, with the bird that you mentioned and with just, seeing Gordon Ramsay on YouTube and then 2 minutes later, you're like already, there.
Yeah, I just popped up something. You know what? You say something and an Instagram just gives you it. And I'm like, oh.
Yes, your phone listens. Yes.
And he was lovely. Like both he and Janine were really, really lovely people to work with.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I do think mindset's a big thing because you just won't, if you don't have the mindset that something is possible, you won't even see the opportunities that it presents. So not necessarily that's like a magical process of like putting it out there and it will come. I think it's more about if you are looking for something, you will find it. Yeah. And it goes this opposite way. Like if you're looking for negativity in others, if you're looking for a lack of hope, and if you're looking for pessimism, you will see.
You'll see it. Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's got to be married up with pragmatism. So you obviously have to take those opportunities by their, take them for what they are, run with them, and do all the work. But don't self-limit because it's not in your immediate environment. Like that's I think self-defeating.
Yeah. And Mason, have you got any final words of wisdom for someone who is potentially in that startup phase or thinking of, starting a startup?
Get the right people in your corner ASAP, preferably someone who's done it. So like straight away, like it's good to have partnerships and all that, but find someone in your industry that's done it very closely, who's an open book. And they really, they really need it, like for them to be valuable, they need to be an open book. They need to say, don't do this, do this. That will just save you time, so much time. And it will take a lot of pressure off you always having to have the answer. That's balanced with you being confident to be able to make your own decisions because their path won't be your path. But I think it's very valuable having a mentor as early as possible.
Yeah, and I can totally vouch for that. I've, having a business advisor has really helped me, one, save a lot of time, but also it's great to have someone to bounce ideas off and also to call me up when I'm, not being accountable or when I'm just, making excuses and not having that open mindset. So it really does help having someone in your corner. And like you say, who's been where you want to go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mason, where's the best place for our listeners to go should they wish to connect with you?
LinkedIn, absolutely. So I'm trying to be more of an open book on there and sharing what we do as a company, how I approach strategy. And I'm really encouraging people to connect there and then they'll find the brand that best suits them from there. So
awesome.
Connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay, great. We'll pop the link in the show notes as well. Mason, thank you so much for your time. I feel like we could continue chatting all day. Thank you for all that you've shared today and for making time for us.
Thank you, Tracy. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.